Welcome to the Stoic Knot channel. In today's video, we will discuss why social media is quietly stealing your attention and pulling your mind away from the things that actually shape your life. If you enjoy this type of content, subscribe to Stoic Knot and leave a like. It helps the channel more than you can imagine. Look honestly at the way most people begin and end their days. The first movement of the morning is not toward reflection, purpose, or intention. It is toward a screen. Notifications appear, images flash across the mind, opinions, reactions, comparisons, judgments. Within minutes, the mind is already full of noise. And the strange part is that almost no one questions this. The modern world treats constant stimulation as normal. Endless scrolling is considered relaxation. Checking other people's lives has become a daily habit. Yet beneath this habit, something subtle is happening. Your attention is being fragmented. Your thoughts are being interrupted before they have time to mature. Your focus is slowly dissolving into hundreds of small impressions that were never meant to guide your life. Marcus Aurelius faced a different world, yet the danger he warned about was strikingly similar. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 6, paragraph 53, he reminds himself that the mind must guard its attention carefully because whatever enters it begins shaping its character. The mind becomes colored by the impressions it repeatedly accepts. Now consider what the modern mind absorbs every day: comparison, outrage, distraction, performance, validation. These are not neutral influences. They shape the way you see yourself. They shape the way you measure success. They shape the way you judge your own life. And slowly, without noticing it, your energy shifts away from the quiet work that builds your future and toward the endless consumption of other people's lives. The Stoics would recognize this immediately. They would not describe it as entertainment. They would call it a loss of inner command. Because when your attention is constantly captured by external stimuli, your ability to direct your own life weakens. Your mind stops acting. It starts reacting. And the tragedy is that the things being sacrificed are the very things that give life meaning. Deep work, personal discipline, time for reflection, honest self-development. All of these require something that social media quietly destroys: undivided attention. This is why the Stoic approach to life begins with a simple but uncomfortable question. Where is your mind spending its energy? Not where you claim it is, not where you hope it is, but where it actually goes, hour after hour, day after day. Because wherever your attention lives, your life slowly follows. And once you see this clearly, another realization begins to form. The problem with social media is not that it exists. The problem is that most people have never learned how to protect their minds from it. 1. The modern battle for your attention. The Stoics believed that the mind is the most valuable territory a human being possesses. Everything that shapes your life begins there. Your decisions, your habits, your character, your direction. All of it depends on the condition of your mind. Protect the mind, and your life gains stability. Neglect it, and your life becomes scattered. Yet look at the modern environment surrounding that mind. Thousands of voices competing for your attention. Images designed to trigger emotion. Headlines crafted to provoke outrage or curiosity. Algorithms carefully built to keep your eyes locked to the screen for as long as possible. This is not accidental. Entire industries are built around capturing and holding your attention. Every notification is designed to pull your mind outward. Every new piece of content invites you to abandon your current focus and enter another person's world. From the Stoic perspective, this environment creates a dangerous habit, the habit of mental passivity. Instead of directing your thoughts intentionally, your mind begins drifting toward whatever stimulus appears next. You stop choosing what deserves your attention. The world chooses for you. Epictetus warns about this loss of control in Discourses of Epictetus, Book 1, Chapter 29. He explains that the person who allows external impressions to dominate their mind becomes a servant to those impressions. Their emotions, their thoughts, and their actions begin reacting automatically to whatever appears before them. Look carefully at how often this happens in the digital world. You open your phone to check one message. A notification appears, then another. A video begins playing. A headline sparks irritation. A comment invites response. Minutes turn into half an hour. Half an hour becomes an hour. And when you finally close the screen, something feels different. Your mind feels restless. Your attention feels weaker. The work you intended to do now feels heavier. Nothing dramatic occurred, yet your mental clarity has been quietly diluted. This is the cost of constant distraction. The Stoics would not argue that technology itself is evil. Their concern would be simpler and more practical. They would ask whether your mind remains under your command. Because the moment your attention becomes easy to capture, your life becomes easy to redirect. And when that happens repeatedly, something even more serious begins to develop. Your sense of purpose starts to fade, not all at once, slowly. The work that once required deep concentration begins to feel difficult. Reflection becomes rare. Silence becomes uncomfortable. The mind begins craving stimulation simply to feel engaged. At that point, distraction no longer feels like a problem. It feels like relief. This is where many people find themselves today, without fully understanding how they arrived there. They feel busy but unfulfilled, stimulated but unfocused, connected to thousands of people yet strangely disconnected from their own direction. The Stoics believed that recovering from this state begins with a single decision. You must take back ownership of your attention. Because the moment you reclaim your attention, something remarkable begins to happen. The noise starts to fade, and when the noise fades, you begin to see something you may have been avoiding for a long time. What actually matters. 2. The silent cost of constant comparison. Once your attention becomes scattered, another problem quietly begins to grow. It is less visible than distraction, but often far more damaging. Comparison. Social media is built on a strange illusion. You are constantly exposed to carefully selected moments from other people's lives. Achievements, vacations, success stories, perfectly framed images of happiness and accomplishment. What you rarely see are the ordinary days, the uncertainty, the slow progress, the failures that shape every meaningful journey. The result is a distorted mirror. Instead of measuring your life against your own values, you begin measuring it against fragments of other people's stories. Their success becomes the standard for your worth. Their progress becomes the timeline you feel pressured to follow. The Stoics warned about this long before digital platforms existed. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 6, Paragraph 30, Marcus reminds himself not to waste time wondering what others are doing or thinking. He writes that the only question that deserves attention is whether one's own actions align with reason and virtue. This is a radical idea in the modern world, because today millions of people spend hours each week observing the lives of strangers while neglecting their own. Each image plants a subtle thought. Why am I not there yet? Why is my progress slower? Why does my life look ordinary compared to theirs? These questions seem harmless at first, yet they slowly reshape the way you see yourself. Instead of focusing on steady improvement, the mind begins chasing external validation. Approval becomes the new measure of success. How many people noticed? How many people liked it? How many people reacted? The danger is not the platform itself. The danger is the habit it creates. Your attention moves outward. Your sense of direction begins depending on reactions that have nothing to do with your character or effort. Epictetus addresses this weakness with sharp clarity in Discourses of Epictetus, Book 2, Chapter 14. He explains that the person who seeks approval from the crowd places their peace in the hands of people who do not understand them. Once you understand this, the trap becomes easier to see. The more time you spend observing others, the less time you spend building yourself. The more your mind absorbs images of success, the less patience you develop for the quiet work required to create your own. And slowly, the comparison begins to erode something extremely important: contentment with progress. Because real progress is rarely dramatic. It unfolds through small improvements repeated over long periods of time. It requires patience. It requires discipline. It requires a willingness to continue working even when recognition is absent. But comparison destroys patience. When your mind is constantly exposed to the highlight reels of others, your own steady growth begins to feel invisible. This is why the Stoics trained themselves to withdraw attention from unnecessary observation of others, not because they rejected society, but because they understood a simple truth. Your life cannot improve while your attention is trapped inside someone else's. Every moment spent studying the image of another person's success is a moment not invested in shaping your own character. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. His writings repeatedly return to the same instruction: guard your mind, protect your attention, direct your effort toward what lies within your control. The Stoics believed that once you stop measuring your life through comparison, a surprising sense of freedom appears. You begin moving at your own pace. You begin working toward your own values. You begin noticing the quiet improvements that were invisible when your mind was distracted by the noise of other people's lives. But this realization leads to another uncomfortable truth. Distraction and comparison are only the surface symptoms of a deeper problem. A problem that affects how modern people use the most limited resource they possess: their time. 3. The quiet theft of your time. Once distraction and comparison begin shaping the mind, something even more valuable starts slipping away without resistance: time. Unlike attention, which can sometimes be recovered through discipline, time moves in only one direction. Every moment spent drifting through distraction is a moment that cannot be reclaimed. Yet the modern world treats this loss as if it carries no real consequence. Consider how easily an hour disappears. A person opens a social media app with no clear intention. A few posts capture curiosity. A video appears, then another. A short moment of rest turns into extended wandering through an endless stream of information that demands nothing from the viewer except their attention. By the time the screen finally goes dark, the mind feels strangely exhausted. Nothing meaningful has been built. No skill has been strengthened. No reflection has taken place. Yet the energy that could have been used for those things has already been spent. Seneca wrote about this problem long before the existence of digital platforms. In On the Shortness of Life by Seneca, Chapter 1, he explains that life itself is not short. What makes life appear short is the careless way people spend their time. He observes that most individuals guard their money carefully, but allow anyone to take their time without resistance. Hours disappear through idle habits, meaningless conversations, and distractions that offer no lasting value. If Seneca were observing the modern world, the pattern would appear even more extreme. Entire evenings vanish into scrolling. Entire mornings begin with passive consumption instead of deliberate thought. Weeks pass in a rhythm where attention is repeatedly captured, scattered, and redirected toward things that leave no lasting imprint on one's character. This is the quiet theft that few people notice. Social media does not simply entertain the mind. It fragments the day into small pieces of scattered attention. Each interruption may seem harmless on its own, yet together they dissolve the deep focus required for meaningful growth. The Stoics believed that every person must eventually confront a difficult truth. Your life is built from the way you spend your hours, not from what you intend to do someday, not from the plans you discuss with others. Your character, your skills, your peace of mind, your direction in life, all of these are shaped by the actions you repeat daily. And when your hours are consumed by distraction, the things that truly matter slowly lose their place in your life. Reflection becomes rare. Learning becomes inconsistent. Discipline becomes fragile. Even moments of silence become uncomfortable because the mind has grown accustomed to constant stimulation. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly warned himself about this danger. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 4, Paragraph 17, he reminds himself that time is slipping away continuously and that the only thing worth pursuing is a life guided by reason and virtue. This instruction carries a powerful implication. Every moment of your day represents a decision about what deserves your attention, a decision about what deserves your energy, a decision about the kind of person you are becoming. When these decisions are made consciously, your life gradually moves toward clarity. But when they are surrendered to endless distraction, your direction becomes unclear. And once direction becomes unclear, the mind begins drifting without purpose. This is why the Stoics placed such importance on reclaiming ownership of one's time, not through rigid isolation from the world, but through awareness, through the deliberate choice to invest attention where it produces growth rather than where it produces noise. Because when time begins to return to its rightful owner, something remarkable follows. The mind starts to slow down. And in that quiet space, a deeper question begins to emerge. What should your attention actually be devoted to? 4. Returning to what actually matters. When distraction loosens its grip on the mind, the first sensation many people experience is not excitement, it is silence. For someone accustomed to constant stimulation, Silence can feel uncomfortable at first. The mind suddenly notices how restless it has become. Thoughts move quickly. Attention searches for something new to consume. The impulse to reach for the phone appears almost automatically. This reaction reveals how deeply the habit of distraction has taken root. But if you resist that impulse and remain still for a moment, something important begins to happen. The noise fades. The mind slowly regains its ability to observe itself. This is the space the Stoics valued above almost everything else. A quiet mind is capable of reflection, and reflection is the beginning of self-direction. Marcus Aurelius practiced this discipline daily. In Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 7, paragraph 67, he reminds himself that the mind must repeatedly return to its own inner command, withdrawing from external distractions in order to examine its thoughts and intentions. This practice allowed him to ask a simple but powerful question: what actually deserves my attention? Most people rarely stop to ask this. Their attention is pulled from one stimulus to another without deliberate choice. Days fill themselves with activity, yet the deeper direction of life remains unclear. The Stoic approach reverses this pattern. Instead of allowing the world to decide where attention goes, the Stoic mind chooses carefully. It chooses reflection over noise. It chooses discipline over impulse. It chooses growth over distraction. These choices may appear small on the surface, but over time, they reshape an entire life. Consider what becomes possible when your attention is no longer scattered across endless streams of information. You begin reading deeply instead of skimming endlessly. You begin thinking clearly instead of reacting impulsively. You begin investing energy in skills, knowledge, and habits that strengthen your character. Personal development stops being an abstract idea and becomes a daily practice. Epictetus described this process with remarkable simplicity in Discourses of Epictetus, Book 4, Chapter 1. He explains that improvement begins when a person stops blaming external circumstances and instead turns attention toward their own judgments and actions. In other words, growth begins when you stop asking what the world is doing and start asking what you are doing. This shift restores something many people have lost: ownership of their lives. Because when your attention belongs to you again, your direction becomes intentional. Your time becomes purposeful. Your efforts begin accumulating towards something meaningful, rather than dissolving into endless distraction. The Stoics never promised that this path would be easy. It requires discipline to step away from habits that offer immediate stimulation. It requires patience to invest time in growth that unfolds slowly. It requires courage to focus on self-improvement instead of constant comparison. Yet the reward for this discipline is extraordinary. Your mind becomes calmer. Your thinking becomes clearer. Your sense of purpose begins to sharpen. And once that purpose becomes visible, another transformation quietly takes place. The distractions that once seemed irresistible start losing their power. 5. The strength of a mind that is no longer distracted. When your attention returns to what truly matters, something profound begins to change in the structure of your mind. At first, the change is subtle. You notice that your thoughts move more slowly. Decisions that once felt rushed now feel deliberate. Moments that once passed unnoticed now invite reflection. This shift may seem small, yet it signals the recovery of something the Stoics considered essential to a meaningful life: inner command. The Stoics believed that the highest form of freedom is not political or social. It is internal. It is the ability to direct your own mind rather than allowing it to be pulled endlessly by external influences. Epictetus explains this clearly in Discourses of Epictetus, Book 1, Chapter 12. He teaches that true freedom belongs to the person who governs their own judgments, who refuses to surrender their thinking to the noise of the crowd. In the modern world, this teaching has become more relevant than ever, because when distraction becomes constant, independence of mind becomes rare. Many people believe they are thinking for themselves while their attention is continuously shaped by algorithms, trends, and the emotional currents of online platforms. Their beliefs change with the headlines. Their mood shifts with public opinion. Their sense of worth rises and falls with reactions from strangers. The Stoics would see this and ask a simple question: who is in control of your mind? If your thoughts are constantly interrupted, your focus constantly redirected, and your emotions constantly provoked by external stimuli, then the answer becomes uncomfortable. The mind has been surrendered. Reclaiming it requires something that modern culture often resists: deliberate separation from unnecessary noise. This does not mean abandoning the world or rejecting all forms of communication. The Stoics themselves lived active lives within society. What they practiced was something more precise: selective attention. They understood that the mind must choose carefully what it allows to enter its inner space. Not every opinion deserves consideration. Not every stimulus deserves a reaction. Not every piece of information deserves time. Marcus Aurelius reminds himself of this discipline in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 5, Paragraph 2. He writes that the mind should stand upright and not be dragged about by every passing impression. This is the strength that begins to emerge when distraction loses its hold. You notice that your energy returns. Tasks that once felt exhausting become manageable. The ability to concentrate deepens. Your thoughts begin forming with greater clarity because they are no longer interrupted by constant external noise. More importantly, your sense of direction becomes stronger. When your mind is no longer crowded with endless images and opinions, you begin hearing your own reasoning again. You begin recognizing what genuinely matters in your life rather than what appears important through comparison. And once that clarity appears, the decisions guiding your future become simpler. You no longer feel compelled to follow every trend or participate in every conversation. You begin choosing activities that strengthen your character rather than weaken your attention. Work gains depth. Reflection gains value. Time regains its meaning. The Stoics believed that a life guided by this kind of mental discipline produces a rare form of peace. Not the shallow peace that comes from escaping difficulty, but the deeper peace that comes from knowing your mind remains under your control. And when the mind is under your control, the distractions of the world begin to lose their authority. Social media, comparison, noise, endless stimulation, all of these forces still exist, but they no longer dictate your behavior. They become optional. Your attention moves where you decide. Your time belongs to your priorities. Your growth becomes guided by your values rather than by external pressure. This is the quiet strength the Stoics cultivated. A strength that does not require recognition. A strength that grows through discipline, reflection, and the steady protection of one's attention. And once this strength settles into your life, a final realization appears. The greatest opportunity you have is not somewhere outside you. It is in the way you choose to direct your mind each day. If this reflection helped you see your time and attention more clearly, subscribe to the Stoic Knot channel. Here we explore the wisdom of Stoicism, not as theory, but as a practical guide for mastering the mind, strengthening discipline, and living with greater clarity in a noisy world. Leave a like and subscribe so you do not miss the next reflection. Your support helps this message reach others who are also seeking a calmer and stronger mind. See you in the next video.